Let's start by going into the user client. This is where operators will tend to spend most of their time. From the user client, you'll be able to connect to your versiondog server to complete tasks like versioning, documenting changes, doing version compares, running manual backups, and things like that. And you can synchronize your security policies with Active Directory, or you can manage them within the versiondog admin client. Here on the left is our project tree. Each device or document that you want to manage within the versiondog system is organized into its own component. So if you have 100 PLCs and 100 robots, you would have at least 200 components within your tree, one for each of those things. Now the project tree organizes all these components into folders and subfolders that are defined and named by you to best represent your organizational structure. You can see in our demonstration here that we've got two different plants. If we go into plant 1, we have a hall 1. We go down to areas 1 through 3, then if we click on area 1, and we'll see the components that are being managed in area 1 of this plant. Now all of the other technologies that are supported by versiondog are also managed within their different components. This could be things like a SCADA server, it could be robots, it could be documents, it could be images, and so on. You'll also notice that some items in the tree are gray and some are not. Now the items that are in gray are ones that are available to me from a security policy standpoint, but I have not actually checked them out yet to work on. If I've checked them out, they won't be in gray anymore. I can step down to the tree like I did here to find the components, or I can click up here and do searches and filters. Now here on the right is our component list. When you select a folder from the project tree, you'll see a list of the components that are in that folder and its subfolders. Now, many organizations realize the importance of using a tool to organize their projects and track their changes, but are also concerned about how much complexity it'll add to their daily tasks. We've taken great care in designing the interface to provide a lot of graphical and color representation so that you can quickly see the state of things without having to spend a lot of time reading stuff to get that information. This allows you to quickly navigate the system to find the information you need without adding additional complexity to your day. If you take a look at the component list, not only do we have the gray and not gray, but we also have the green check mark for items that are checked out, or the red no if they haven't been checked out yet. You'll see the name of the component that we've given it. You'll see what type of component it is. There's some tag-based stuff that you can do if you want to. And you can also see the lock state that that component is in. There's a padlock and a traffic cone. You'll quickly know which state it's in based on the two different states that are available within versiondog. You can also see that the copy that we have is currently equal to what's sitting on the server because we've not made any changes yet. You can sort, filter, move these columns around, and there's additional columns that you can add if you want that information available to you. If you want to see the details of a specific component, you can select the component from the tree here on the left, or you can double click on the component here and the component list on the right. Let's go ahead and take a look at this S7 component in greater detail. So every component has a change history tab, and this starts giving us our version history details. You will notice that so far for the Siemens device, we have 7 different versions. We have version 7 checked out to work on. We didn't check out any of the previous versions, although we could have. We can also see information about when the version was created, who made those changes, and notes about those changes. In the lower section, we can see a list of the items that were changed to create the version that I had selected above, along with information about the objects that were changed and any notes about those changes if we had collected them here. You can see how the component details here start to show us some of the who, what, where, when, and why regarding our project changes. Now, if we want to print or export some of this information, we do have that ability from the menu bar here at the top. Now, from a pricing perspective, we don't care how many versions that you want to keep within the component. You could have hundreds. To us, this is just one component that is being managed. Now, from the Change History tab, we can run compares between any two versions that we have stored here in the system. You don't have to check a component out to run those compares, nor do they have to even be in succession. Thus, I can compare version 7 with version 6 simply by right-clicking, comparing with my previous version, and then I will see the side-by-side comparison of those two versions. You'll see all the different changes between the two projects here on the left, just like we had on the previous screen, and you start seeing your notes about why these changes were made. You can step through each one. You'll see the differences that were made because they'll be showing up in red, and you can print and export this information if you need to. Now maybe I want to look at two different versions that aren't actually in order. I can say, let's look at version 5. I can set it as a compare partner. I select version 3, compare it with that set compare partner, and then we'll also show you the differences between version 5 and version 3 in detail. Maybe you had some projects that had ladder logic in it that got changed. You can see that information within our Smart Compares as well. Let's go ahead and take a look at this RSLogix 5000 as an example. I can compare my version 5 against my version 4. And you'll see that our Smart Compare shows us the differences in that ladder logic that got changed, with the differences being here in red. You can zoom in and zoom out if you need to get greater detail, and you can print and export this information. Now, we don't have comparisons just between different PLC code changes, but this could be the same for SCADA systems. It could be done for robots and even various documents. Maybe you have some PDF-E plans that you're storing within the versiondog system on different changes. An example of this could be you took a snapshot in time of the way your plant cable drawings or infrastructure layout or network topology today, and then your plant went through an upgrade, and you took a new snapshot in time and you had that information stored in CAD. You can save those as two different versions within a PDF-E plan, and then our PDF comparator will show you the differences between those two documents. This is great so that if someone comes to you and says, I understand that we went through a plant upgrade last year, can you kind of help me understand what we did and why? Then this information can be stored as a PDF-E plan, and you would see the side-by-side comparisons similar to what you see in a document such as this. And then you can zoom in and get additional details and see the differences that are in red. Again, this is very similar to what you do between robots, SCADA systems, and switches, routers, and ASCII-based files. Now, every component also has a Jobs tab. Let's go back to our S7 component and take a look at that. Go to the Jobs tab. If there's any jobs that are scheduled for this component, they will be listed here. You can see that for this S7 device that we have a job that is scheduled to run every day at 1 a.m. There's some different information here about who to notify, what to do on an air, different save policies and compare policies, and so on if those were set. Now, you don't set up the jobs from the user client. Those are actually done in the admin client, but you can start the job manually from here if you need to. Now, in the bottom part of the pane shows us all the results of each time this job has run. And what you'll notice is that whenever we do a backup, we will go out to the device, grab a backup of what's sitting on that device, compare it to the version that is sitting in versiondog, and notify you if they're the same or different. Obviously, the device should have the same copy of code that is stored in the versiondog server, and if they are different, you need to know why, because one of the two locations is out of date. You need to determine if this is a situation where some changes were made, but it didn't get uploaded to the device properly. Maybe someone plugged in directly to the device and made some changes, and those changes did not get made back into the versiondog system. Or it could be a little bit of a scary situation where you had a malicious change. Again, you would have all this information here. This is just one of the locations that you could see this. You'd also be able to see this information in the admin client. You can get email reports sent to you, and then you'll be able to see them in some of our reporting systems. So one of the other items regarding licensing and pricing is based on the number of jobs you want to schedule. You'll see here that we have one job scheduled, and that so far it's run 5 times in the past. To us, we only count the scheduled job and not how many backups you have of that job. You could have hundreds of backup results for this job, but the licensing and pricing, this is only counted as one scheduled backup job. Typically, you'll want one backup job for each physical device you have a component for. If you're managing some things in versiondog like documents that don't require you to go out and connect to another device to get it, then you wouldn't need a backup job for that component. One thing I'd like to draw your attention to is that everything I've shown you so far did not require the use of an editor from that manufacturer to do it. We work close with a lot of manufacturers that we support so that we can build our smart compares directly into versiondog and avoid the use of editors wherever possible. Many of our competitors are very heavily dependent on the use of editors, which tend to make their products much slower and can even cause issues with different versions that you're trying to compare. Our smart compares make the user experience much better and allows you to be more productive because you aren't waiting around for the data to be transferred to your machine, then waiting for the manufacturer's editor to load up the project and then script through it like a human would do just to show you some comparisons and such. There's also a cost savings and productivity gain because you can do a lot from a machine that has our free user client. This could be something like from your office computer that might not have editors, but you'll still be able to see some version details and such. And then you only really need to go into the development system if you need to make some code changes. Let's walk through an example of how a user would check out a component to make changes to the project and to save it as a new version. Let's pretend that we want to work with our TIA portal project to make some new changes to it and make an upgrade. You'll see that it's currently sitting in gray, so we haven't checked it out yet. We need to first check the component out so that we can work with it. Now I can check it out from the menu bar here at the top, or I can right click and get access to it as well. Let's go ahead and check it out. Now once you hit checkout, you'll get the checkout dialog box. You'll see that in the box we have our tree here on the left, so we can add additional components or even drag and drop whole folders to the list to check them out. Then if you're checking these components out to give to a third-party vendor to work on for you, you can hit this check right here, and then we will bundle all those projects into the target directory of your choosing. This could be a USB stick, file share, network share, or some other resource that you want to provide to them with those projects. That vendor can go off and work on the project just like they do today, knowing nothing about versiondog. Once they've made their changes, there is a file that's in those file sets where they can add their notes. They give those changes back to you, and there's a one-click button on the menu bar in versiondog so that you can start that import process, and then we will compare the changes that they made against the original that you gave them, and then you can double check the work to make sure it's set up to your standards, see their notes, and see their exact changes side by side. Now when you're checking something out, you're typically going to put it in one of two lock states. If you select under development, then technically that'll let everyone else know that you have the component, but they could still check the component out. They can make changes and they could check things in ahead of you. If you don't want them to be able to do that, then you also select lock for other users. And in this situation, as default, they could check something out, but they could not check those changes in ahead of you. Now there are some other competing tools out there that no matter what lock state you put it in, if you check it out, your colleagues can't do anything with that project until you're done with it. Either one of these states that you have selected, we still allow other users to check things out so that they could open it up in their editor, even if they just want to look at something but not make changes. We don't want to stop that process. We do have the ability to configure it that way if that's what you want to do. Just realize that no matter which lock state you put in, you can force these values in the setup, or you can leave them available to be selected. But no matter which option you pick, versiondog is not going to let you make accidental mistakes. If you only had under development selected and someone made changes ahead of you and you try to check your changes in, versiondog is going to let you know that you don't have the latest changes. It's also a situation that versiondog is going to let other users know when they're checking things out that component is currently sitting in a lock state by somebody else. So there's no situations where someone would go, oops, I didn't know that my colleague had it to be worked on. You'll then typically put in some notes about what you're doing, maybe working on next 4 days. And then you can hit checkout and close. You'll now see that the component's not in gray anymore. And then now we're going to hit open with editor. Now what we've done during this process is we've moved a copy of the project and version that you want to work with over to your local engineering station. And that way, if you ever needed to scrap it because you decide not to work on it or you're not going to make those changes, you can cleanly do that and not affect the projects that are sitting on the server. Now, once you hit open with editor, we're just going to open up that project in whatever manufacturer's editor it's assigned to. In this example, it's a Siemens TIA portal. But if you were working with Rockwell, a Robot, or Word documents, Excel documents, things like that, we will just open up whatever application it's assigned to. Now, once your project is loaded in your editor, you can just work in it just like you do today, nothing different. We're not encapsulating this editor in any sort of window, so we're not going to slow that process down. We are monitoring the folder structure behind the scenes so that we will notice when changes get made to the project. I'm going to go ahead and make 4 quick changes to this, and then we'll check it back in. So let's go into the PLC section. I'm going to change some program blocks. I'll select my main block. Okay, we'll add a block here. I'm going to add a new block because versiondog will track not just things that get changed, but anything that gets added or deleted to the project. Now realize I can make changes to anything in my project and versiondog is going to track it. So if you are keeping any IP addresses, type of information in the project that's showing up, any type of code changes, that'll be tracked by versiondog. We'll go ahead and make some changes to some code. Now, if you've been using other compare tools that are out there, you'll sometimes see situations like this break them. We'll go ahead and delete a whole line of code. And in some tools, other tools out there, it moves everything up and everything after it looks like a change. I'll show you what that looks like within versiondog. Let's go in here and make a couple PLC tag changes, and we'll finish things up. We'll change this to like a character data type. Change a couple security policies. And then once we're done with the project, we can go ahead and save it. Close our editor. And then you'll see the little pencil icon here and here. This shows you that versiondog has caught the fact that you've made some changes to that project file. Now, if I want to go away to lunch and come back and work on it some more, I can do that. I can hit open with editor and I can keep working on it. If I want to come back a couple days later, hit open with editor and keep working on it, I can do that as well. It's only after I'm done making all the changes to the project that I actually would need to check it back in. So let's pretend that we've made all of our changes, we've done all of our testing, we're ready to check this back in as a new approved version. Now I can go up here and I can create my new version. And then our smart compare is going to take all those changes that I made and compare them against what I started with. And then at this point in time, I can start adding my notes. So this is also one possible advantage in time savings feature, in that you don't necessarily have to write down in the notepad all those changes that you're making to the program if you don't want to. Because when we show you the side-by-side comparisons, we'll actually show you what you did. You'll see that my 4 changes are listed here on the left. You'll see I can change my version identifier up here. If I don't want to call it version 2, I can call it version 2.1. I can call it base code. So you could have the option to change that. These 2 line items here are the notes about the change as a whole, so regarding the whole project. This specific change is used in these 2 fields here. So maybe this was a TO portal upgrade. I can add thousands of additional characters here in notes. Maybe this specific change here was a feature update. I can add thousands of additional characters and notes here. I hit next to go to my next change. This is where we didn't have the block, but we added a new one. So maybe this is something like a feature add. Add my notes. Go to my next one. You'll see here this line of code that I deleted. versiondog caught that everything after it was still okay. So maybe this is a feature remove. Add my notes. And then that last change that we made is here where I changed a boolean to a character and changed some security policies. So let's say this is a security fix. And then add my notes. Now, if I'm good with everything and I want to just check everything back into the server as a new version, I can do that in one click by clicking on this button here. But maybe we're out on the plant floor, or we're disconnected from the network, or we're not ready to check things in immediately. We have that option to just check it into our local machine first. Let's go ahead and do that here. And now you'll see that when I check it in locally, that my local version is still version 2. We quickly show you that it's not equal to what's sitting on the server because you haven't checked into the server yet. If I try to leave my user client right now, it will alert me and let me know that I haven't checked everything in. But now you can look down here in the Change History tab, and you'll see that we have a version 2 created. It shows that I did it. It shows my notes about why I did it. And then you'll see those 4 changes here in the bottom, along with any notes that I've provided here. If I wanted to, I could right click and I could do another comparison and see those changes. Now, once I'm back on the network, I can go ahead and hit check in and close. And then now you'll see that our local version's 2, our server version's also 2, and that they're equal. And now any of my colleagues can come in here and look and see my information just like I see here. They could also right click and do a version compare and see the side-by-side differences. This could be an advantage in some maintenance situations where you made a change to a PLC and you have several other PLCs that need that same exact change. You can let your colleagues know that you made the change to the first one, and then they can start making changes to the other one, and they can simply go in here and do a compare and see exactly what you did, and that might help make the maintenance and upgrade quicker and simpler. Now let's pretend that you want to add a new RSLogix 500 to the area 1 of your plant. This is one of the other advantages that we hear against the competition is how quick and simple it is to add new components to the system to start managing. So the first thing I can do is I can right click, I can add a new component, and this is going to be an RSLogix 500, so we can go down through all the different component types that are organized by folders down until we get to Rockwell. I grab my RSLogix 500, maybe I don't call it that, maybe we call this an extruder 1850. There's some additional master data here, and you can change these field names. So if you had, say, 1,000 of these in your organization and you aren't real sure how to locate it in the tree, you could change these fields and call it like serial number, asset ID, and collect that information here. And this is searchable within the versiondog system. Now, once I've given it its name, I create my component. Now I've got my component container sitting here, but it's an empty, there's nothing in there yet. So the first thing I need to do is I need to go out and grab that project or set of files and bring them into the versiondog system. I can do that by going into my file manager. In this situation, I've got the project stored in documents, data. Here's my RSLogix 500. Now this is an RSS file, so it makes it easy drag and drop. If I had multiple files here, I could select all the ones I wanted and put those into the system as well. You simply grab the file, you drag it, you drop it into that component container, and now we're not linking to this file. We're actually bringing a copy of that project and putting it into the versiondog system to manage in a central store. So I can do whatever I want to with this file here once I'm done. You'll now see that the component contains the project. I create my base version. And now we have version 1 sitting in the system, and now anyone else can come and get access to it, check it out, and start managing it. Now there are a whole bunch of other things you can do within the user client, but this is just a pretty quick overview of some of the more common features available. And you can see how using the user client can assist you with managing your project and device data easily with simple processes and lots of visual cues like the padlock, traffic cone, equals and not equal images, along with the pencil and other things that help you see the status of things quickly. It provides 100% traceability to know the who, what, where, when, and why changes are being made. And it also allows you to maintain the change history with your documentation. Let's take a look at the AdminClient and some of the things that we can accomplish with it. Now, the AdminClient is where a lot of your administrators will work. It's for managing users, licenses, archives, configuring backup jobs, components, settings, and things like that. So we'll first log in. Again, you can synchronize your security policies with Active Directory or manage them within the AdminClient. Let's start by showing how to create or configure backup jobs. You do that within the Jobs section here. Now in the Jobs section, we have our project tree on the left to help us find some of our components. We can also search for them. So let's grab that extruder that we created earlier. To start the configurator, I simply grab the component I want, I drag and drop into the middle, and then we have our Jobs configuration pane here on the right. Now, because we already know what the component type is, we typically know what the upload type will be. And because of that, we can give you some of the prompts for the configuration settings to make that connection. Now, if this is a Siemens device, then of course the connections might be different. But most of the other stuff in the middle will be the same no matter which component you're working with. You do have the option of changing the upload type if you have more than one way to connect to the device. So if you can connect by FTP, SSH, or UNC, or a local directory, things like that, or even our imaging service, you can change that. The next thing you'll want to do is set your execution state. Now you can pre-configure your jobs and always run them manually if you want to. If you have a disconnected device and you want to use our backup client, you can still pre-configure that job as well and just use our client to get that data. You can trigger by URLs, but typically you're going to do according to a schedule. And then you want to set that schedule. You can set it down to the minute. You can do it once a year or variations in between. You'll then want to select what to do on an error. Let's say there's a network error when versiondog tries to connect and grab that backup, or the router's down, or the device isn't available. You can say on an error, try a certain number of times every certain number of minutes. You can also select who to notify from within your admin rights, even down to a specific person. And then you can say when to notify. You can send an email always. You can do it when it's equal, different, or an error. There's some other information here about setting your save policy state, your compare policy. You can also select how many backups that you want to keep before you start rolling them over, along with some additional information here. And in some situations, you can enable configurations that are specific, excluding certain things that you don't want to grab, and so on. Once you've made all your configurations, you hit save and your job is configured. Now, just like in the user client, all your results will show up here in the bottom every time this job runs. So you don't have to jump back and forth between the user client and the admin client to see this information. Also realize that this information will be available in our different reporting tools. Now, some other highlights and sections within the admin client is you have a component type editor and a script management section. So you can get fancy and create some of your own custom components or do some script management if you want to do that. You typically don't have to because a lot of the features and functionality is already built into versiondog, but it is available to you if you want to do something fairly unique. The global settings is for setting up the server, changing your language and things like that. The system dashboard will help you manage your license, so you'll always know how many components you're using in the system or how many backup jobs you have against what you own in your license, storage information, and so on. Managing your license is pretty simple because you don't actually have to connect to the internet to activate anything. You don't even have to be connected to the internet at all with the versiondog server. If there's any changes to your licensing, we would just send you a new bin file and you'd be able to quickly connect to that using the licensing section here. The next area I'd like to highlight is our user management section. Now, we can get extremely granular in who has access to what within the system, as well as what components or folders they have access to. You can see that if we go into one of these users, into the project tree, that they have access to this information, and here's their security policies. Now, if you want to only give them access to a specific plant or even a specific component, you have that option. And the nice thing about setting it up this way is if you were organizing or managing, let's say, 50 plants within your organization, and some workers only worked in certain plants and not the others, you can set their policies up to only have access to what's in that plant. Now, this is good from a security policy standpoint because obviously users should not have access to things that they shouldn't be working on, but also it cleans up their project tree because when they log into their user client, they're only going to see the folders and components that they have access to. Some other options is you can go ahead and you can organize based on component type. Maybe Peter Krause only has access or should only be working on Rockwell equipment. you can give them access to just those component types. And then again, you can synchronize your security policies and manage those through Active Directory. Now, there's a lot of additional features and functionality with the AdminClient, but we've covered some of the highlights. The next thing we'll do is cover some of the reporting tools. Now, versiondog comes with two different reporting tools. One is browser-based, and one is application-based, like you see here. Both of them give you pretty much the same features and functionality. They're just in a different type of application layout. Let's start by taking a look at the web client, which is browser-based. We open up our browser. Now, the web client is not public to the world. This stays internal to your organization. We just happen to have a bookmark in our browser that connects us to the versiondog server, which dishes out the HTML pages. So let's go ahead and log in. And everything that we do within the versiondog system is being tracked, whether it be components, error logs, jobs, and so on. Let's go ahead and take a look at the component log section first. You can see some of the details as it relates to our components. Here's that extruder 1850 that we were working on earlier. It shows who was working on it, down to the computer name, and some other various information that might be collected and reported on. Now, you can do global filters. You can filter on specific columns. You don't necessarily have to know the format for our timestamp. You can actually use the helpers here and then narrow down the range that you want to look at. The same holds true for the different components. We'll list all the different components that are showing up in the report so you can select and deselect that information. And this information can also be exported to be printed. Let's go ahead and take a look at the job section. You might want to start with the job statistics spot, since it's a little bit more graphical. Now you can see within the job section, we're looking at our whole server. We can set our current state. This might be like the last 8 hours or the night before, and then we'll have our results listed here. In this situation, maybe we'll look at our whole tree, and we want to look at the last 8 hours to see how the jobs ran, and we see that 11 came back different. Again, these are ones that need to be investigated because they're showing that the version that's sitting on versiondog and the version that's sitting on the device are different. So we can click on the text link here or here in the pie chart, and then we'll go to the jobs list and filter out those items for you. And this can be kind of like a to-do list to go through and see why these are coming back different. Let's go ahead and take a quick look at the report client. We go ahead and log in. We select the time frame that we want to look at. Now we can also select the area of the tree that we want to look at if we want to. In this situation, we'll just look at the whole thing. And then our results show up here on the right. You can see here's our new components, deleted components, new versions, and so on. If we want to actually see these items, we can click on the text, and they will show up here. You'll see that extruder 1850 again, just like we had in the web client, along with the other details about who's doing this work, what they're doing, the computer they're working from, and so on. This information can also be exported and printed if you want to. Now, one of the features about the application client over the web client is that if you set this layout the way you like, you do have this option of saving this report so you can come back to it later. Now, there are a whole lot of other features and functionality available within versiondog that we didn't have a chance to cover, but I hope this gave you a quick overview of some of the highlights. If you have any questions or would like to see a live online demonstration of versiondog to learn more, you can contact us from our website or feel free to give us a call or email us at the number and email listed. Thank you for your time.